I don't know if anybody remembers from last night, but that's where we were in terms of making the former. And what I've just done is stick the windows behind. We've got a slight curve to them. I just stuck them behind, and now we're ready to add the curved brick cover. Now this is just laser cut onto 1mm craft card. It's just got a nice carved brick effect. What I'm going to have to try and do is glue this totally in sync with the former that's on already. I'm going to have to cut a bit of a slot in there to allow for that to slot down. Good evening, Georgia. How's Georgia? So I've already trimmed this to size. It should just be a match, slightly oversized for the piece that's underneath. Now I'm just going to use this as a template to judge where my slot needs to be. Which is on there, isn't it? It wants to come up to there. So to help me with the curve on this, what I did is I fastened it to a suitable tube with multiple elastic bands. So it's been held in place for about 18 hours or so. With an elastic band, and it's just held the curve. That's just going to make it easier for me to glue it in place if it's got a curve to it already and I'm not trying to force it. Now I need to make this gap 4mm, not 2, because that's the thickness of the wall. So I'll just use this offcut as a spacer, so I know how much I'm cutting down. It's going to be easier to do this than oh, that'd be nice. I hadn't realised you were on your own, Georgia. Or is it just you and your brother? I bet that's been interesting. So cutting a slot in it like that, we'll just let it slip in place. So what I'm going to do now is try and slowly glue this over the top. Before I can fix it fully in place, I'm just going to paint the inside of that curve black so that so it's not going to show when I've got the window on. In fact, before I go too much further, I'm just going to do that so it's not going to show when I've got the window on. In fact, before I go too much further, I'm just going to do that now. Probably need a bigger brush, to be honest, if I'm going to cover this. Just bear with me a second. I'm only on for a short while because then I've got to go out and pick somebody up. I just seem to be forever taxiing at the moment. If I paint this corner black, it'll just give the illusion of depth without actually having anything there. And that's what I'm going to do with most of the windows, is just have a dark covering behind so you can't see very far in. only really need it on the one face, I think. So there, we'll put that on. Have I got any water? I'm going to end up ruining the brush. I found one. Okay, so that should be enough. You all right, Tim? Good evening, Sarah. How are you? So like everything else, I'm going to glue it gradually. I've also got to act fairly quickly because the glue does actually soak into the card quite quickly. Oh, did they go to the Isle of Wight? Very nice. I've never been to the Isle of Wight. Right, that's the central part glued. And we've just about managed to marry those walls up. Now I want to force some glue behind. And then we're forming a nice curve there. Could have done with doing is putting another form inside, but because of the little slot we need, that's not easy to do. So my last stage is going to be covering that final curve. I'm just going to have to take a little bit off. There may have to be a little bit of adjusting with possibly a bit of filler once I've got final alignment. So my hope tonight is to get this tower added, and then I can put some filler or some grout across these walls, so that it's then in a stage to be able to give it a coat of paint before fitting the windows behind it. I'm going to do it in stages. I'm not going to I'm not going to paint the whole lot at once. I'm hoping to sort of do around the corners, get these towers in, then I can get the windows fitted in. And once the windows start being added, it really starts coming to life. Just do with a spare former, but I think I used it up. Never mind. I'm just going to use a spare former just to help me get that curve. I said there's going to be a little gap right behind. I'm just going to have to make that up with some filler. It's not too bad though. The thing I'm desperately trying not to do is get it on my fingers and subsequently get it pulling off. I think it's actually glued. I'm just going to wrap a nice pink elastic band around the top just to force it in place for a minute. So it's following the shape of that former that I've already put in. It's just flattening off a little there because I've got nothing holding it in place there. But for the most part, it's done. As that dried, that's mostly soaked in. Just going to have to give the windows a bit of a wipe to get rid of my fingerprints. And let's just give it a test fit. It's not bad. I just have to adjust a little bit at the back. That's not bad indeed. Let's just come up so you can see. I've actually made a little, you can see here, I've made a little test cone. I've already put one up on that far corner, just in front of all the paints. A bit of a test cone, like I say. I think I might have to actually do it in reality in paper, because it's a little too hard to manipulate in card. Saying that though, I might have just done it, and that wasn't an intentional escape to the chateau. Yes, I have. It was the guy, the eccentric guy with the big moustache, and his flamboyant wife. And they sort of buy a semi-derelict French chateau and do it up with the intention of running it as like an events business and living there at the same time. When I used to watch TV regularly, I used to love watching that. I don't watch TV anymore because I'm doing this. Well, that must admit, I was tempted to switch off. And switch off working is what I meant tonight, and just chill for a bit because I'm feeling rather tired. It's like a little cat. I had a game, when I was little, I had a little board game called Cop It. It was my favourite game. And it had little cones, little hats that used to chase around the board, and if you caught somebody up, you were allowed to put your token over the top of theirs and capture it. I remember I got it for my 7th birthday. It's the one and only birthday party I've ever had. But I say, I used to love that game. These little cones remind me of those. So it's not perfect, it's not quite right, but that's the cone top. It needs a little bit of work, but we're almost there. And talking of needing a little bit of work, I'm just going to have to glue behind here now in that seam, and I'm going to wrap it with some more elastic bands just to pull it in more circular. And I say that without access to any elastic bands, I'm sorry. I realised that they're on the other side of me then. So like I said earlier, I'm going to have to keep an eye on the time because I'm due to go pick somebody up at, not broken, pick somebody up at 9 o'clock. I don't think it's going to do a quadruple wrap. These elastic bands are quite old. No, it's not going to go as tight as I want it to. Let's just see if I can do this anyway. I might just have to use pressure. Good old-fashioned pressure. And see if I can avoid sticking it to the table. That would be a bit of a nightmare. Like I say, it's the card is likely to peel off if I get glue on it. Right, I'm going to leave this alone for a moment before I do end up gluing it all over the table. So whilst that's gluing, setting, I'm going to just sand this area down. If I can find a suitable piece of sandpaper, because you know, I've got stuff everywhere now. There we go, found it. I know I've got a bit of 600 grit somewhere. So part of the reason why I haven't put windows in just yet is because of all the sanding and sticking and dust that's likely to be around for a while. Some of the stonework I'm starting to get blended in a bit, so I'm going to have to rescribe that. Good evening, Cat. How's Cat? Yeah, not too bad, thank you. It's nearly weekend, isn't it? I can't wait to get a coat of paint on this and start to see a little bit more uniformity. But for now, we're just fine-tuning the surfaces. Sorry about squeaking. What is it? This is a model of a French chateau that I'm currently building. You see a little bit better from that angle there. At the moment, I'm just working on the tower placement. I think I might just have to smooth in a little bit more filler to make that transition a bit less severe. But now the first layer's in, it should be easier to put a second one in. Why? It's on its side because I'm just trying to get more of the image in the camera. And if I film on its side, I can transfer it to landscape view later on. If I can download the live. So, yeah, I must admit it does look a bit odd, but if you're a regular viewer, you don't mind turning your camera over. Well, my regular viewers know that that when they come across my live, they need to turn the camera over. Okay, so I'm just going to put another layer, a thin layer of ready mixed filler onto that joint. See if we can get a smoother transition going on. Obviously it's going to wreck my fingertips, and I'm kind of working a little bit upside down here. Sometimes your finger is the easiest way of applying. So sometimes it does take a couple of applications until you've got the fill that you require. Might be enough. Let me just try and smooth it in a bit better now. I'm getting real deja vu here, and I know I've never done this before. Strange that. that side is pretty much fine. It's just this seam here that needed some work. Thought for a moment that those windows weren't pointing in the right direction, but they just need twisting around. Right, I will need to wait for that to dry now. It's going to take a little while, but it's only a thin layer, so it shouldn't take too long. So now I just need to have a think about what bits I'm going to do next. It's always a bit of a sequence in this, in trying to figure out how best to spend time. You know, I said I was looking for a former, I've just found one. Never mind, it's a bit too late now. I think perhaps I'm going to fit, just found some stray glue. I'm going to fit a retaining wall, not retaining wall, a dividing wall, structural wall in place. There's this one here that just holds the back together here. It's not a great photographic angle, but you get the idea. Now I just need a scrap. Essentially what I've got here is a spare piece of card that's no longer needed because I cut it wrong. So I'm going to need to use it as a packing piece. So if I can just trim off the top part, the excess, and just hold it in the right place. And rather than try and laser cut it, I can just do it by a scalpel. It just might take a little bit longer to cut through. I can probably manage to do this before I have to sign off for a little while. It's only 2mm MDF as well, so by that I mean I should be able to get decent cut. That shouldn't take too long. Sorry, I'll just pan down to there. So it's a relatively fresh blade. It just takes lots and lots of passes. Well, not that many, as it turns out. So like I said, that will just slot behind there and act as a packing piece. If I glue that in place now, that will give a little bit more structure. It does look a little bit untidy inside. Oops. But that's only because you won't see it, so I don't particularly pay an awful lot of attention to the inside structure in terms of its aesthetic, as long as it does the job. I'm going to need to cut the roof slightly shorter here, because it's got a little valley on it. It's going to have a valley piece there. How does it feel not working with Foamex? It feels really odd, yes, because Foamex is my kind of signature material. But it has pros and cons. I mean, the MDF is a great material for laser cutting, and it's so sturdy. Even, I mean, Foamex is fairly sturdy to begin with, but it has a certain amount of give to it, especially in 2mm. So you don't need as much structural pieces working with sorry, I'm lost my train of thought. Working with MDF, you don't need quite as many structural pieces to hold it all together. I think I might just have to take some height off this in hindsight. I'm going to take a bit off, like that. So yeah, it's things like this. When you work with Foamex, I could just think nothing of trimming it to size, because it's quite easy to cut through. But this takes a bit more cutting, especially if you're wanting to try and trim a piece of 4mm. You can get through it with this scalpel, but it takes a long time. It also kind of seems like it's got a grain. One direction is a little bit easier to cut than the other. But like with many hard surfaces, you need to make sure you're cutting through in multiple passes rather than trying to cut through all at once. It feels like I've gone all the way through, but it hasn't. One thing you will always get with a knife cut is a raised edge. Don't know if you can see there. You always end up with a slight burr, I don't know if that's the right term for it, which you don't get with a laser cut. But I'm not going to use the laser trimmer just to cut the final fine-tuning pieces. Besides, yet I haven't fully calibrated my laser, so it will accurately place. So there we go. No, that's not very photogenic there. This angle, I'm trying to keep an eye on time. I'm going to have to go shortly. That's a very unscientific and inaccurate measure and method of gluing, just splattering it everywhere. Just try and get the glue on quickly, because MFC, I work with MFC at work, MDF is quite permeable, so the glue does soak into it quite quickly. So you've a narrow window of working time before it just hardens on the surface and you have to start again. I might actually have used it the wrong way around. One angle was better than the other. Good, it hasn't stuck. Bizarrely, even though it's supposedly square, one side fits in better than the other. And like I was saying, it's soaked in and now won't stick. It just requires a little bit more. I think I might need a trip to the store to get some more fixative spray. Where I can, I avoid using fixative because it soon goes. Oops, disaster. Also the clamp isn't clamped properly. You can see that. I also have another piece of board here, unfortunately. That is actually supposed to be on the edge there. Right, just do some little trimming before I move up here. I've just got it on an angle because I want to try and make sure it's going in the right place. Right, I'm going to try to put some glue on it now. I've actually gotten left. And the distant whirring sound is my laser cutter in operation at the moment. It's just cutting something unrelated. That's down as far as it will go. Good evening, Yaya. Sorry, I'm just going to have to switch to the underside a moment. A bit of off-camera sticking, I'm afraid. Soon find out whether that laser cutter has worked or not. Okay, there we go. Tower's in. We're going to have to blend it now with some filler. See if this bit's worked. Kind of. It's funny because it's just not cutting through everything. I might just have to give that up as a bad job. I'll try again tomorrow. I'm definitely not going to persevere tonight. Right, so that's the noise out of the way. Sorry about that. You're going to run? Oh dear. Never mind, at least you came in for a little while. Right, what I'm going to do now is just add a little bit of filler down that line there, and then the same on the other side. I'm just looking for something nice and flexible to use as a spatula. A little bit of white Foamex will do for that. Like so. So again, this is just the all-purpose filler from a cheap shop. Any of the little stone lines that I end up filling in by accident, as it were, I'll just have to remark with the scalpel or scribing tool, whichever does the best job. Good evening, Christopher. To get a nice blend in there, I'll probably have to add another layer like I did on that side. Do I have a deadline? I kind of do. I have a loose deadline of September. I know it seems like a long way away, but my client is actually in the south of France. This chateau is in the south of France, but they are planning on a trip over to England in September. So, as luck would have it, that would be ideal for a handover. So, I've got until September to get it done. I want to get it done, though, realistically speaking, by the end of June, because I have other projects to work on. But if I really, really needed the time, yeah, I've got until the end of September. So in theory, I could work on this for a little while and then leave it for a month while I did another job. But I never like doing that. It's never easy leaving something. Not unless you're completely... You hit a wall with something and just need to move on to a different task for a while. But apart from I'm sure the client won't actually mind me saying this, apart from the struggle that I've had with drawing it up, free time build, yes. Apart from the struggle of drawing it up because of the sheer size of it and the inaccessibility, really, of decent elevation image. It's been a little bit of a pain, but building it's been fun. Building it's been a lot of fun. It's just sometimes the structure only becomes really apparent once you're actually... It's all very well staring at something on my computer screen for hours on end and trying to work out how it goes together, but you're only looking at it in a flat plane. But once you start actually building it and you can see how it comes together in 3D, you get an appreciation of how it's actually going together. And then you realise that something isn't perhaps quite as it should be, which has happened a few times with this build. And it's been both frustrating and an interesting learning curve. I did actually spot something today whilst I was having a little look at the drawing at lunchtime in the car, as you do. And I realised I'd glued a windowsill in completely the wrong place, which was making the windows much bigger than they actually are. Good evening, Elms. How's Elms? Thank you very much for for popping in. It's always nice to see new faces, or faces that don't normally speak. This bit here is a chimney. It's like most of it rendered. I've made it out of several thicknesses of 2mm MDF here, so to hide that seam and to also give me the rendered surface, I'm just going to cover that with filler as well. Yes, this is actually based on a chateau in the south of France, in an area called Le Puy. So I've been sent lots and lots of photographs, and I've used Google Street View and Google Earth to try and ascertain the footprint size. Sometimes I'm really lucky with Google Earth that they've 3D mapped the area and you get a really good view of the property from all angles without actually being there. But this one, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that luxury. I've only got really low resolution aerial photography in flat 2D, so it's not been that easy to... can we see what I'm actually doing there? It's not that easy to measure. This is just an out of the pot all-purpose filler. I use it for all sorts, but it's very useful for modelling and filling small gaps. It It usually costs about £3 or £4 from the discount shops. I don't buy the expensive stuff because I use such a lot of it. And I'll just put it on quite thick here and then sand it down. What I'm aiming to do is get this corner finished in terms of structure. So that's going to need waiting until all the fillers dried and set properly so I can sand it, and then I'm going to cover it with a thin layer of PVA, and then on top of that sprinkle a fine layer of powdered grout, and that's going to give me a nice sort of rendered surface. And then I might need to sand that down again as well. This is a lot bigger than projects I've worked on, or I work on normally. So as a result, it's quite hard to fit the whole project on screen. I started off with this one in a flat elevation, so it was a lot easier to see because we're kind of looking at it in an overhead view. But now we're sort of pulling the thing together. It's harder to visualise or to view on screen, not without buying a completely new tripod setup so we can get a bit further away. The problem is that because I'm live streaming this, I need to be able to see the comments, and at the moment I'm just viewing you through the phone. I may have to rethink the whole setup as we go on. Maybe get a tablet or a laptop set up with the comments showing as well, because if it's further away from me I won't be able to see it. Working lights, yes, I'm hoping to put a couple of lights in. They haven't asked for them, but I think the project, like Dave's project, I think it requires, or it's crying out for lights. So I haven't worked out where I'm going to put them yet or how I'm going to put them in, but yes, the plan is for a few lights. And again, it's not going to be blazing away. Thank you very much, Pond Water. It's not going to be blazing away, I'll just have a few showing. But to do that I'm going to have to create dedicated little spaces. You like the lawn, you like the lights. This corner is actually a little bit rounded in real life, so what I'm doing is just I'm going to fill that butt join, and then when it's butt join, misses, and when it's dry, I'll sand it off. So again, I think I'm probably going to have to wait until it's set before I can carry on much further, but I don't know if we can come far away enough. I've so many bits and pieces in the background that don't help. So what I can't wait to actually do is get the whole thing a uniform colour, because at the moment we've got lots of different shades, which shows up the different finishes we've got, so it does look very much like it's in a construction stage at the moment. So once I've got some colour onto it, we should be able to start bringing it to life a lot more. The next bit I'm going to work on structurally after that is this building that comes this way. There is another long building that comes at the back, but I haven't drawn it up yet. So the next bit, thank you, the next bit's going to be across here. I still haven't fine-tuned the sanding off of the areas here. But one thing, quite embarrassingly, that I've I noticed today that I fixed off camera before I came on is when I was building these, I got the position of these windowsills wrong. So I'd actually glued them to the bottom here. So they were a good sort of 3mm lower than they should be. And every time I kept looking at the model, I was thinking, there's far too small a gap between the two windows. What's going on? What have I done wrong? And it was only when I looked back at both the photograph and the photograph of the real thing that I realised I'd messed up. So unfortunately, I was able to peel it off and move it up. And you'd never know. If I'd never told you, you'd never know. But there you go. That's sorted out now. So I'm much happier with that. Got the tower in place. I've done a little baby temporary tower hat. I just googled cone shapes. I found a really really useful cone generator. You type in the values you want and it will create an SVG file, although it does come out the wrong size. So I had to play around with it a bit to get it to the right size, but this is what the sort of conical cap will look like. But what I'm going to do is, before I make it, I'm going to glue, I'll take that back apart again. The shape to create it it's almost a semicircle, but it's just not quite. But it folds together to form a cone. And what I'm going to do is glue some graph paper onto this, I think. Although I don't think it's actually going to work. What I really need are some. In fact, I might have to design it. What I need are some concentric circles going up to help me lay the tiles. So in retrospect, I think what I'm going to have to do is take this drawing here, and I'm going to inset the line all the way up so it in concentric circles starts coming together, and that should give me what I need rather than graph paper. Sometimes as well you have to talk these things out loud before you can figure out what you're doing. So yeah, I could see myself very waste of timedly gluing graph paper onto it and then realising it wasn't going to work after all. So you guys have just helped me brainstorm how I'm actually going to do that bit. So what I'm going to do is, like I say, I'll could even laser etch those lines on. That will help rather than printing it out, because then it'll be straight onto the material. So like I say, I'm going to get those lines onto it, and then I need to cut out some tiles, but it's going to be ages before I get to that bit. I've had a lot of comments like that about people wanting to shrink themselves down so they can get into the buildings. Yeah. Magic, isn't it? I've done the same for the other tower that's over there, but this one's a bit more hard to manipulate. I might have to use some slightly thinner card, because it's not, even though it's quite sturdy, it's not that easy to fold into shape. Pros and cons about that, of course, because if I do persevere with it, it's quite a sturdy little cap. Can we see that? There you go. You can just about see it. I've got another light shining there, but it's not much use really, is it? So I might just have to, it's not bad. So I might just have to make that a tiny bit bigger. For now I'm going to leave it off. Okay, move that one, it's pinged away. That's once that filler's dried, what I'm actually going to do is cover this with a layer of PVA, because this is made out of card. I'm just going to paint a thin film of watered down PVA over the top of this, and that will give me a bit more, it'll give the more rigidity, and it will allow me to sand as well. Excuse me. Right, what I want to do now is just mock up. Oh, good night. Good night to you too. What I want to do is mock up a roof for this structure here. I'm going to make it out of grey board. And I need to cut out a notch for that little bit of wall. Doesn't actually fit underneath my shelf anymore either. I'll just pan down a bit so you can see what I'm doing here. What I'm going to do is cut out, like I say, a little notch for that bit of roof in the first place. The roof is usually the last bit I do, because I need to be able to get inside the model to put both the windows and the electrics in. If I'm going to put electrics in, I'm going to have to put a little bit of... You've got to go to a lift. Alright, see you soon. Yeah, I'm going to have to put a bit of flooring in, I think. Sorry, let me go again. Just to... hold it all together and to give the lights something to come into. Also, so the fact that when you're looking through the windows, even if it's mostly darkness inside, you're not going to see like a a big void inside. So although I'm not furnishing it, I do need to... I'm running out of room on the table. Although I'm not furnishing it, I do need to put floor space inside. I have to be mindful of material. Just show you that, just because that notch I've put in there, that will sit nicely behind that curve and just sits on there, giving us a nice little roof. At the back here we've got an interesting sort of feature here, that it doesn't come back the full length of the main house, it only comes back this far. We've got a lower building which comes down to about here, which comes off this way, so it has a lower roof line that comes down sort of about there, and again it's just a little bit lower here, and it heads off that way. It's a very, very interesting structure. I suspect over the years it's been added to. I mean, it's very old as it is now, but when it was probably first built as just one manor house at the front here, and then eventually moved forwards, and that's probably why the majority of it is rendered, to hide the fact that there are joins in the stonework. I have to keep tilting the camera because you can't see. Where am I going? That way. It does actually marry up quite nicely to that that other roof. I did think I was going to end up with a big gap to try and have to deal with, but thankfully it all lines up. Next, I need to try and work out this section. So first of all, I'm just going to do it to the full length. Push it back a bit. Okay, I'll get in touch with you. You should be able to DM me. But yeah, that should be okay. If I can find it. Am I following you? I'll just follow you back so I can try and remember to message you. The best way of getting in touch is through Instagram, through here. My Instagram link should be in my bio. There should be a direct link, but if you can't get it to work, I'll try and follow you. If I remember, I'll try and look it up after I come off here. Now this is the hard thing to do because of the turret shape. It's not an easy shape to try and cut out in... let's get the camera up. Can we get the camera up that far? It's not an easy shape to cut out because you're talking about a circular plane but at an angle, so it doesn't... you can't exactly trace over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roughly cut around where it should be, and then I'll use masking tape to gradually chisel the position it in, and then I can then use that shape again to oops, that's fallen down. I can use that shape with the masking tape on it to trace over a new piece. So it's going to be a bit of trial and error getting this to fit in the first place. I'll just keep cutting some pieces out until I get... That wasn't a bad guess. It's not far off. Need to go a bit further. Now I'm down here. While you're down there, I can just mark where the chimney is. And again, I hadn't realised that I was off screen, so apologies for not showing you that part. But I was just marking, whilst I was trying it to fit, where the chimney goes. Again, I'm going to need to chisel off a little bit for that. We'll start small-ish. Very handy little model making set squares, these. We're a little bit generous on the chimney. Not a huge problem though, so I need to come a little bit further. Not far off. I just need to do it again. A little bit more. And just fish that back out. Fortunately, I've got lots of little globules of super glue stuck to the mat now, so I keep getting a little bit stuck. Oh, I'm nearly there. I'm way off on the curve there. So that's the part I'm going to have to. It's the part I'm going to have to fill in with masking tape. Okie dokie, I'll check it out as soon as I can. Right, the bit that's holding me back now is the chimney. Sorry, I should have held it up there, shouldn't I? Yeah, that's a basic mock-up. It just needs a little bit of adjusting. I think the angle on that part is just a little off. I might just need to shave a little bit off that part of the gable to make it all line up. Just pull my camera back a little bit. So that's how we're looking at the moment in terms of the structure. This bit's floating at the moment because the ground level is going to be about here, and then it slopes down, which is why we've got that floating aspect to it. But it won't be, because when I put the road in, you won't see that. Okay. Okay, so there's not much I can actually do tonight before this sets. This bit I did earlier and it's almost there, but I don't want to risk sanding it before it's ready, so we'll just leave it. What I can do though is just go back into these windows here and just do a little bit of fine scraping, just taking a little bit of any clay deposits that have accumulated around the edges when I was making the moulding details. I'm just going to switch to a flat file. I can't believe I got these windowsills wrong in the first place. Much better now. I'm just trying to cut in a little groove where the stones meet, because they're not a one-piece moulding, so they're made out of several pieces of stone all tacked onto each other. And to get that effect, I've just etched a little line with a laser cutter when I made this piece, but obviously it doesn't go right through the entire structure, so I'm just following it through with the knife. It's quite possible that it won't actually show when it comes to painting it, but I just want to make an attempt at making it seen. Now it's a really nice dressed stone, this, so there's not a very coarse gap between the stones, which is why I'm using the knife. mindful of the fingers. And yes, I have stabbed myself before doing something similar. Doesn't matter if I slip over onto the main wall a little bit, because it's going to have a texture applied to it. So any kind of marks or imperfections on the MDF surface will be hidden. Yes, that great big white blob on my finger is filler, not some kind of strange skin affliction. I'm doing all the right hand side first so I can pull away to myself. Pull the knife away to myself. It's not going to be as easy on the left hand side. Oh, there's a little bit just come off there. I wonder if I can tack that back with a bit of glue rather than having to use filler. I'm just going to use a tiny little sliver of offcut just to scrape in some glue there, and then let's see if I can tease this back in without it breaking. There you go, you'd never know. Let's never mention it again. Hello Muji, yes I do, how are you doing? Right, I've still got all those other bits to do, but do you know what? I'm actually feeling a little bit tired tonight, so I think I'm going to call it a night. But it's a point where I'm going to have to wait for this all to set anyway. So maybe I can combine that with putting the filler layer on tomorrow. But for now, I think I'm going to call it a night. I've done quite a lot. It's not easy to see the full thing, but there you go. That's how we're looking at the moment. And yeah, we're getting there slowly and surely. So thank you very much for watching tonight, and I will see you all again tomorrow.